All right, welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. If this is your first time here, I ask that you listen keenly all the way to the end of the video, or you might miss what is most important. I also ask that you comment, you share, and you subscribe, and you leave your comments in the comment section below so we know that you were here. Now, the New York State Bar Association calls upon the state to consider mandating a safe and effective vaccine if voluntary measures fail to protect public health. We are going to talk about that. A lot of people are contacting me because, as you know, SouFLoTV kind of focuses more on the Caribbean diaspora and specifically Jamaican community at home and especially abroad. Well, in New York, we have many Jamaicans and many Caribbean people and many Caribbean communities spread out all throughout the 5 boroughs of New York. So this would affect us greatly. Pay attention. Now, I received a phone call recently where somebody said, SouFLo, listen, they are about to make the COVID vaccine mandatory for the state of New York. Now, I live in the state of Florida, and I'm thinking, if it goes mandatory in one state, then there will definitely be a ripple effect, and it will probably become mandatory in all other states eventually as well. Just the thought of mandatory COVID vaccine for every person sounds crazy as hell to me. But a lot of people are saying crazy is as crazy does, and crazy does happen. All right, so what I did was I went to the website, which is a .org, NYSB, New York State Bar Association.org. I went to their website, and lo and behold, I found the New York State Bar Association calls upon the states to consider mandating. Mandating means to make mandatory a safe and effective vaccine if voluntary measures fail to protect public health. Now, what exactly is this about? I'm going to get into the details. I ask that you pay attention. So the New York State Bar Association is recommending that the state considers mandating or making mandatory a COVID vaccine once a scientific consensus emerges that it is safe, effective, and necessary. But before taking this significant step, the state government should conduct a public awareness campaign to urge voluntary vaccination. What does that sound like to you? So here's a group of lawyers, right? Or you can go to their website and find out what they are about. In short, the New York State Bar Association has been the voice of the legal profession in New York State for more than 140 years. They claim that their mission is to shape the development of law, educate and inform the public, and respond to the demands of our diverse and ever-changing legal profession. NYSB, or the New York State Bar, advocates for state and federal legislation and works tirelessly to promote equal access to justice for all. And there is a lot more on their site where you can meet their leaders and members and so on and so forth. Okay, that was taken from NYSB.org, and you can go check it out for yourself. All right, what this sounds like to me, this just said that before taking this significant step of making the COVID vaccine, once it is available and once scientists say it is safe and effective and necessary, that New York makes it mandatory. But before they make it mandatory, before taking this significant step, the state government should conduct a public awareness campaign to urge voluntary vaccination. So before they go ahead and say, look, mandatory, everybody is going to have to get this, they want the state government to run a public awareness campaign first. Kind of like a campaign where McDonald's convinces you through your television screen to come down to McDonald's and order a couple of their new burgers because the lettuce is so crispy and the onions are fresh and the meat is good and all this other stuff. And you see it on your screen and that big, tempting, mouth-watering looking burger. So it's kind of like that. They would first require the government of New York to run a public awareness campaign to get more people, to urge more people to voluntarily be vaccinated. Now, in the event that they do this, roll out the commercials, roll out the sessions at the clinics, the in-person sessions, roll out like going to people's jobs and having these classes where you go, you know, when you're at work and they're like, hey, it's mandatory, everybody got to go through it, so we got to go down there and listen to this 30-minute block of instructions from the health department of the state. And when you go in there, they're talking about the reason why you should be vaccinated. If they do all these efforts and it does not work, if enough people do not get vaccinated, then their plan is to make it mandatory. Therefore, you will not have control anymore. And the reason they would do this is, from what I am understanding, is if enough people do not get vaccinated to make the numbers go down. Say, for instance, we're having 1,000 per day infections. If after vaccination, enough people voluntarily get vaccinated and those numbers start dropping and they drop significantly low to say 10 or 20, then maybe it's not necessary to make it mandatory, because then it would have told them that enough people have been vaccinated, so no need to force it on who doesn't want to. The place is relatively safe. But if they roll this campaign out, urging people to volunteer, and not enough people come forward, and these numbers continue to climb, then they're basically saying that there's no need to sit on this good stuff that the scientists are saying is effective and it's necessary. No need to just sit on it and have people walking around spreading it to other people and catching it and all that stuff. Make it mandatory for everyone to get it. Now, the New York State boards are the New York State Bar Association's House of Delegates. They approved a resolution on November 7th of 2020. We're at November 15th. A lot of this stuff is happening and we're not paying attention because we are distracted by elections. We're distracted by whatever else is going on. But we're not paying attention. So their House of Delegates approved a resolution on November 7th outlining conditions for requiring the vaccine for all New Yorkers, save or except those who are exempted by a doctor. So if your doctor says, no, my patient cannot have, or you cannot have that because you already have a pre-existing condition, that would make things even worse if you take that. So for those of you who do not have no pre-existing conditions and you don't have a doctor that is going to sign off on your paperwork that says you cannot take that vaccine, you are exempt, then if it goes mandatory, then you will be considered one of those that were required to have it as well. It would be up to public health authorities, they say, to decide if a vaccine mandate is necessary and whether it should apply to all residents or to a smaller population, such as just like healthcare workers, because they're always around people that are sick, or say students, because students are always in schools and they're always around a lot of people, right? So those are two ways that an example of how they would mandate it. They're saying maybe it's not necessary, but it would be left up to the state. However, they have drawn up the plan. They have submitted it. They have submitted it. New York State Bar Association House of Delegates approved a resolution on November 7th. Approved a resolution, the resolution has been approved on November 7th, and it outlines conditions for requiring the vaccine for all New Yorkers, except for those who are exempt by a doctor. Does that mean that this is what I'm understanding, and you can go to nysb.org and look this information up yourself. It is printed right there for you to see. I will leave the link so you can go read through it and get a proper understanding of what is being said. Don't just listen to everybody talking to you out in the streets, because right now people are freaking out. I had somebody call me, for a couple of people called from New York so far, to say, SouFlo, please talk about this. I think they just made COVID vaccine mandatory for all New Yorkers. And I said, what? What? Let me go do some research. And this is what I came up with. NYSBA, which is the New York State Bar Association House of Delegates, have approved a resolution on November 7th. In that resolution, it is outlining conditions for requiring the vaccine for all New Yorkers, except for those who are exempt by doctors. They've also said in that resolution that it would be up to public health authorities to decide if a mandate is necessary and whether it should apply to all residents or to a smaller population, such as a care worker or students. Now, with the number of cases again on the rise, both nationally and nationwide, the association is asking the state to, and I'm reading this directly from the nysba.org site. With the number of cases again on the rise, both nationally and nationwide, the association is asking the state to, and this is what they're asking the state to do. They're asking the state to ensure that vulnerable populations are treated ethically and without discrimination. This includes communities of color, older adults, nursing home residents, people with disabilities, prisoners, and immigrants. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Attorney General Letitia James and 2 national civil rights organizations have criticized the federal government's plan to distribute the vaccine through pharmacies. They're saying, why pharmacies? They say that the plan falls woefully short of meeting the needs of communities of color that were disproportionately harmed by the pandemic. So in other words, then, make it mandatory for them, or bring it to them and give it to them. Let's cut out this pharmacy stuff and let's cut right to it. It's funny because a lot of these same people who they are calling vulnerable populations, a lot of those people have voiced their opinions on any vaccine coming out anytime soon. People are concerned. People are saying, I don't give a damn. I'm not taking it. This was developed too quickly, and there are no real long-term side effects studies done because of how quickly it was developed. So I don't want to be a guinea pig. So could you imagine what will happen if they make this mandatory, and the only way you can get out of getting it is if your doctor says you already have a pre-existing conditions and that will be exacerbated by taking this vaccine, so you are exempt. So that means you would be a candidate to receive this vaccine against your wishes, against your religion, if you believe, because there are religions that don't believe in vaccines. And I think Jehovah's Witness is one of them. So if through your religion it says no, then they wouldn't give a damn, because you would be on the list and you don't have a doctor's note that says you are exempt. They're also asking the state to enact a State Emergency Health Powers Act and crisis standard of care addressing gaps in existing law. It is essential to a well-coordinated response to the pandemic, increasing the capacity of the system if there's a surge in cases. If there's a surge in cases. It would also clarify the legal authority and ethical standards for making decisions if there are shortages of anything from personal protective equipment to trained healthcare workers. It is also asking the state to release older prisoners and those with disabilities and serious illnesses who do not pose a danger to the community. I don't know if y'all know it, but the US has the most people in prison across the globe. We have more of our citizens in prison than anybody else in the world. Within that prison population, there is a rather large population of people that are elderly. If you can imagine given a life sentence and you have to live out your life sentence, however, you are no longer strong and crazy anymore. You have changed over the decades that you've done in prison. So now you are in your 70s and your 80s and you're fading away behind bars. There is a whole geriatric population behind bars, which requires a whole other prison healthcare system to take care of these elderly people behind bars. So they are asking the state to release older prisoners and those with disabilities and serious illnesses who do not pose a danger to the community. They are also asking the state to eliminate restrictions on the provision of care by telehealth and to increase reimbursement for such services. Now, on their site, the nysba.org, the magnitude of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is what it says. It says that the magnitude of the COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented over the last 100 years by any measure, and the number of lives lost, and the survivors who remain seriously ill, and the risks that are faced by healthcare workers, the disproportionate impact on communities of color, the profound trauma, and the disruption of our economy. This is what the NYSBA President Scott M. Carson said. In other words, he feels that this is justified because of all these things. The survivors who still remain ill, the risks that are faced daily by healthcare workers, the disproportionate impact on communities of color, and so on and so forth, is enough to say, let's mandate this thing. The United States was unprepared to deal with this pandemic, and we need to take these actions to be sure that we are ready should there be a rise in New York's caseload during this cold winter months that are upon us now. We are in November. It is going to get colder in a lot of places in New York. A lot of snow going to be falling. It's going to be freezing cold. And it is said that the cold weather actually helps to give life to COVID. So with the cold weather, preserving it, making it stay around longer, and we already now know that it's airborne, so it can stay around longer in the air now and spread to more people. It is going to be important to look at mandating this vaccine for all New Yorkers. And again, don't panic on my word, because there's a part where it says that it would be left up to state health officials to decide. Okay? I will follow this one closely and see where this is going, but this does leave room for concern, especially for people who do not want to be vaccinated against their will. Pay attention. It's going down. Leave your comments in the comment section below. It's SouFLoTV. If you live in New York, are you planning on taking this vaccine? And if it becomes mandatory for everybody in your state, what are you going to do? Are you going to flee to another state where it's not mandatory yet? Or are you planning on leaving the United States of America to go live in another country? Or are you going to just surrender? I want to know. Catch you on the next video. I'm out. Peace.